everybody. Welcome to another episode of Politically Depressed. As always, I'm your host, Eamon McAdam. So before I start today's episode, I just want to remark on how well my latest video essay is doing. I'm very surprised by it, very pleasantly surprised. When I released the video, I had about 400 subscribers on my YouTube channel, and now I'm somewhere close to like 6,000. And so, very pleasantly surprised. I mean, I knew it was a good video, but I didn't know that it would gain that much traction. So if you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. And if you're listening to this episode of this podcast because you watched that video, hello, welcome. To fill you in on the format, this is not a video essay. This is a filmed podcast where I talk about essentially what's gotten me politically depressed that week. There's no shortage of things, and so I try to provide some analysis, but also just like a space to be like, fuck. I don't know. Because it's hard. It's hard reading the news by yourself. You know, we weren't ever meant to take in this much information. And then the shitty information we do get, you know, like the algorithm on social media is not going to hold your hand and be like, are you ready to hear this? This just happened. It just bam. And then bam. And then an advertisement for suntan lotion. And then bam. Anyway, so that's this episode. Or I mean, that's this podcast. This episode is going to be on what's happening in Syria. Specifically in Sweida, which is a Druze majority area in the south, which in the last 6-7 days now has been experiencing and witnessing very intense sectarian clashes, which started between like Bedouin tribes or like armed groups within Bedouin communities and Druze militants. It quickly escalated into sectarian killings, into massacres. It drew in the security forces, which up until that point were not in Sweida region. It's relatively autonomous, which also prompted the Israelis as well to get involved. And it's been really terrifying witnessing because, again, we're still watching it happen. And as a result of it, you know, it's not just the deaths, which already, I mean, we're talking about up to 600 people, all told. But the sectarianism, the vitriol, the hatred, the suspicion. You go online now and you see videos by Syrians condemning the entire Druze people, saying that they're all collaborators, that they're all Zionists. And, you know, that is what the Israelis are saying. But it comes with the fact that that's clearly their agenda. But so there's just been so much intense sectarianism, which is not anything necessarily new, but it is definitely taking on a new shape at the moment in Syria. And what's happening at the moment is very reminiscent of the massacres that took place in the coastal region a few months ago. And what I want to do in this video, in this episode, is not necessarily provide a good overview. I'll probably mention some things here or there. For a good overview, I will provide links in the description below. I will also provide several good organizations, media organizations, and activists and social media accounts that you can follow that I think have been doing a very good job of not only sharing updates, not only providing analysis, but also in like dissecting the narratives. Because I think at the moment it's very difficult to parcel out what's happening because there are so many different conflicting narratives. And I see a lot of very loud voices trying to place a narrative onto the situation that just doesn't match. I don't see it. And so what I'm going to do instead, you know, is, I don't know, just talk a bit about how sectarianism is incredibly toxic and dangerous and violent and just, I don't know, also share a bit of a kind of like emotional, because I've noticed one thing that a lot of people have a hard time doing for some reason is relating to what's happening in Syria at an emotional level, understanding that these are people and communities who just want to live in dignity and in freedom, and they're caught in these, situations, or are forced into these situations and in these systems of domination, but also are like literally caught between local and regional and international forces. And so I'm not Syrian. I don't have to be to feel for people in Syria. I think any human is able to empathize and to not just see it as some like geopolitical game playing out, and these people are with this and they want to do this, they want to bring in the whatever. And that's something that I think has been a very good development in the last couple of years with Palestine, which is connecting with these people at an emotional level, allowing ourselves to understand our psychology in these moments, witnessing massacres, extermination campaigns, pogroms. And I really don't think you can understand or even be like stand in solidarity without that connection. And so for me as a human, I think that's essential. As an Arab, it is also something that I think is deeply needed. But for me, there's something also another layer, and I mentioned this in the video essay, and I've mentioned this a bit in the podcast. But I am Druze. I come from a Druze family. Being Druze does not necessarily like influence my personality or my worldview that much. But there is something very specific about watching Arab men attack Arab men, in this case sheikhs. As in, these are two Syrians, or a bunch of Syrians grabbing this other Syrian who's a Druze sheikh and shaving off his mustache and humiliating him and torturing him. The mustache, I have to say, especially amongst the clergy of the Druze community, has a lot of significance. I don't think necessarily religious, but it's a thing. It's a thing. Like in my village, like when you drive around Druze neighborhoods, Druze sheikhs, it's like a measure of seniority. You have these beautiful, huge, so impressive, like such impressive mustaches that I wish I could grow, but God, did not bless upon me what he blessed upon my brethren. And so, I don't know. And then I go online and I see people commenting, whatever, it's just a mustache, will grow back. Why do you care more about mustaches than people's lives? In reference to Bedouins, which Druze militias have also committed atrocities against. And it's just, that is just so, I don't know how to, like genuinely, I have spent the last 2 days trying to do this video. I've written several outlines, I've recorded several versions of this, and I just get burnt out, like very fucking quickly. Because just at an emotional level, at a social level, it's been very difficult. It's been very painful. And again, because these are other Arabs, this is all done within the Arabic language. And the kind of familiarity that I have with all these people, that I have with that language, seeing it used against each other, against my people. I mean, I had the same thing during the massacres in the coast in March. It was just so painful. And I did an episode about it at the time. It's kind of the same format, I think. But I don't know. Sectarianism is just disgusting. It is the worst thing amongst us. In our region in specific, it has been like the cursed chalice. A lot of people go to it seeking protection and safety, and ultimately it is a beast that will bite all of us. Like, genuinely, sorry, I just want to clock this for a minute, because it's like, I cannot believe the level of sectarianism I'm seeing online and then manifest in these massacres. Like, at the moment, Sweida is besieged. There are so many videos of armed men, like extremists, sectarian Sunni extremists, who are marching to Sweida to kill Druze. And so it's a very real situation, and it is a humanitarian catastrophe already, because it's besieged, and there's like shortages of electricity and water and medical supplies. And those who have spoken out against this within Syria, because again, since the fall of Assad, there is a new revived kind of civil society. Activists are able to actually protest, and have been for the last few months, about several cases, especially of the disappeared. But just an hour ago, before I started recording, or I mean 2 hours ago, there was this group of protesters in front of the parliament. And their slogan is literally just like, Syrian on Syrian blood is haram, is forbidden. And they were attacked by a group of just fucking whatever, sectarian-minded people who told the sort of security forces, like, don't get involved. And it's a very fucking scary situation, because what a lot of people in Sweida are saying is that what initially, people are like, a lot of people are describing that it's basically like extremist forces, Druze militias, they were fighting, the army gets involved, tries to stop it, but the Druze militias then attack the army, and therefore the army starts attacking the Druze, and then Israel gets involved under the pretext, ostensibly. I don't buy it for a fucking second that the Israelis give a shit about the Druze. Like, most people in Sweida that I know, most Druze that I know in Sweida, here I'm definitely not talking about like Palestinian Druze in 48, right? Who have Israeli citizenship and serve in the army. I'm putting that aside. Even though what sectarian people are doing, and people who are trying to place a kind of sectarian narrative onto all of this, that the Druze are all one, and that we're all Zionists, it is just not true. And it is a very dangerous lie, and a very dangerous narrative that the Israelis are also utilizing. So by attacking Damascus, as we saw the other day, in the supposedly defense of the Druze population, the Israelis are contributing to the sectarian narrative that a lot of people are just jumping on board with. And being like, yes, they are like Zionist collaborators, traitors, all of them. And what's going to happen if these militias do go? Like, Israel's probably going to use it as a pretext to fully invade. And there's like a mandate to protect the minorities. And so, as we've seen in Lebanon, I think, this is my readings of Lebanese history dating back to the 70s, that those that participate in sectarianism feed like the leadership, but it is a thing that like impoverishes and disempowers everybody for the sake of those leaders and the regional powers. Israel loves sectarianism. It's its go-to thing. It's been doing it in Lebanon for the last like 60 years. 50. And now in Syria, which again, sectarianism is not new. Sectarianism has existed in Syria for also another like 55 years. Um, it was introduced by the French. I mean, it has its origins in the Ottoman Empire, but by the French. The like later Ba'ath party under Hafiz really started to implement it, and again because like Alawites and whatever, and really pinned minorities against each other. The last 13, 14 years, the regime really weaponized sectarian discourses and like implemented it, and claimed they were protecting the minorities. And like by protecting them, massacring everybody else. And so Syria really is a fucking powder keg, right? You do not have a regime for 54 years that just brutalizes any dissent, and has such a like stranglehold over everything. And then once that goes, and it's inevitable to go because it created oppression, which breeds resistance, as we know from so many other cases. And so all these things have been, and after 13 years of war and the amount of weapons in the country, like it's such a mess, and it's going to take a lot to pull itself out of the brink. I think Syria now more than ever, it may genuinely be heading to like an actual civil war. I, for the longest time, have rejected the phrase civil war to describe the last 13 years. Because it's not. It was very much like a counter-revolutionary war. War between the regime and all these elements that kept changing, and eventually, yeah. I mean, we know the groups at the end, like that existed towards the end, that are now literally like in the fucking parliament, in the fucking government. I don't know. There's a lot, and it's really fucking terrifying. And the Israelis are just completely let loose, Like at the same time, they are still enacting their genocide in Gaza, that they're enacting their like full ethnic cleansing of the West Bank, killing dozens of Palestinians every single day, bombing Lebanon every single day. Just the other day, committed the largest massacre since the so-called ceasefire. We really need to examine what the word ceasefire even means. It's not. It's just not a ceasefire. So what is it? How do we describe this current state where like Israel is allowed to just bomb whenever, wherever, and just get away with it completely? And we're not allowed to say like bupkit, like anything. Or do anything. And so in Syria in specific, in Sweida, there really needs to be a de-escalation. And I don't know how that happens. A lot of people in Sweida are very, very fearful, and rightfully so. Not just of the immediate consequences of these clashes with these Bedouin tribes and these other like Sunni Arab sectarian groups, extremists, but also like in other Druze in other places of Syria, and then of the state. Like there is a large distrust, and a lot of the atrocities that happened amongst Druze civilians was done at the hands of people who were wearing like in Ministry of Interior vests. Like the phrase that I keep hearing that I think is really important is that the Shara is either unwilling or unable to rein these elements in. I don't like the guy. I've never defended him. I mean, they're like I've tried to be a bit like objective and like seeing what's happening and like people's relationships and like different groups and whatever. But I think it's very clear though that there are worse, like relative to the groups and the people that exist in the country that are very like close to him, there are worse. Like, and again, that sounds terrible to say, and it sounds like I'm defending him, but I'm absolutely not. I'm trying to be realistic about the situation, which is very terrifying, which can get worse because there are these elements that are just so bloodthirsty and violent and sectarian, fully. Like, there's not even a pretense of, pragmatism. But so, I don't know if I've already said this, but I'm going to say it again, or I'm going to say it, that I think if people's main focus is the Israelis, which a lot of people accuse the Druze of being Israelis, like Israeli collaborators. Again, I see this bullshit online, like all the Druze are Jews or whatever, or like they're one and the same. These clashes need to end. The violence against the Druze, the massacres against the Druze, the siege of Sweida needs to end. And it seems like potentially the only person who can do that is a Shara. But it's also just such ridiculous bullshit. Like, if all these groups are going to attack the Druze because supposedly the Israelis, they're like the Israeli stooges or whatever. And so basically they're motivated by attacking the Zionists. Go to the Golan Heights. It's right there. Attack them directly. I don't know. It's been really difficult because it feels like very basic things to be sitting here and saying sectarianism is bad. To be saying nobody should be saying an entire sect, an entire religion is X, Y, and Z. But this is where we are. And again, I don't know if I've said this again. This is a very messy episode. I'm sorry. My emotions, my mind, everything is very messy. And everything in the ground is very messy. All this is not to say that Druze militants have done nothing wrong. Specifically, those under the control or under the Druze Sheikh al-Hajari. Dude's kind of fucked. And he's had a very long, shitty, like, history. And even recently, there are reports that, like, there are forced expulsions of Bedouins at the hands of these militants, which he then goes on and says that he condemns and that that's not his people. It's all very confusing, but it's very clear that, like, what was allowed to happen in March is replicating itself. What happened in the coast in March, that the lack of accountability, that these sort of, I don't know. I'm really fucking scared. I'm really worried for the people of Sweida. I'm really worried for Syria as a whole. I have been since, I mean, again, I've talked about this in this channel, that, like, Syria has been a focus of my political depression since at least 2011. I mean, that also coincides with my just, like, sentiency in the world, because I was, like, 18. But so there are horrors to come. And at the very least, we can try to work to make things more coherent, to understand what's happening, to see what ways we can lend our solidarities. The people of Sweida are under attack. There are very rampant sectarian forces and discourses that are going just rampant. And it is very fucking painful. It literally makes, like, a burning sensation in my heart. Like, just thinking, like, remembering now, sitting here, the comments, the videos, the mockery, of the Druze. And again, the Druze, I need to remark, like, we're like 2 million. You know what I mean? In the world. We're very fucking few. And because of that, there's a lot of lack of information about us, knowledge about us. We're also a little secretive, not really, but no. So I am going to do a video about the Druze as a way of, like, educational purposes. The religion, the history, the contemporary history, but the politics as well, and like the lived experience. Like again, I rarely see. I mean, I haven't watched these like 5 minute like who are the Druze, you know? But no, I don't know, whatever. It's fine. I'm gonna do that video as a form of like education because I've noticed that there is a lot of ignorance, and ignorance breeds a lot of this bullshit. But I don't know. I really don't know. I just knew I had to do this, um, because it's important, and people's lives are on the line, and I don't think this is gonna save them. You know what I mean? Like I don't. But it's just at least we can bear witness, at the very, very least, that it doesn't just all happen in the shadows, in a kind of fog of war or whatever. God, I don't know. Sorry, I hope this is something. I really don't know if this is anything. Again, I've done this video like 3 times, and each time I got like 20 minutes in, I was like, I just deleted it because I was like, anyway, I'm just gonna wrap it up there. Actually, before I go, I did promise that I was gonna give like recommendations for where to follow. So I'll get to that right now. Obviously, these are all in the descriptions. The first one is Megaphone News, which is based out of Lebanon. It's bilingual. They're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. They've got their own website, but the website isn't that good. They do really fucking good videos, like really social media savvy, daily recaps, analysis, updates, voices from the ground. It's definitely one of the most valuable resources in the entire region, like in Syria, but also Palestine and Lebanon. They also do these daily recaps where they talk about, every day. This, I think, started when the war escalated in Lebanon, and they've been continuing it, which I find very good. Of like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., what happened today? And it's usually Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and global stuff related to those geographies. And yeah, I really just recommend them wholeheartedly. I think they're fantastic. The second one is El Jumhuriya, also bilingual, also on Insta, Twitter, and Facebook. They're from Syria. They do more writing stuff, and it's very good analysis and very much so like grounded in local knowledge. My main thing about like a frustration I have around discourses on Syria is that they almost always avoid listening to actual Syrians. I've noticed that over the last 10 years that, you know what I mean? Like, we do this with Palestine, we do this with whatever. We don't do it with Syria for some reason. So any rube off the street can come off and be like, this is the truth about what's happening in Syria. And it just goes viral. So anyway, El Jumhuriya is a good one. There's another one called the Syria Campaign. This is more of a social media account of activists. It's mostly in Arabic. There are some things in English, but it gives a really good insight into like the civil society, like activists within Syria, what they're doing, what their demands are, whether it's for the dispossessed, whether it's dispossessed, the disappeared, or for social. I mean, even now, these protests that happened in response to these massacres in Sweida, they have a video on there about like the movement, the sit-in in front of the parliament. Another really important channel is Sweida 24. It is only in Arabic and only on Facebook, but I think the translation stuff is pretty decent these days. But bear in mind, Sweida, for some reason, still gets translated as Sweden. The words are very similar, but it makes for some very funny reading headlines if you don't know that fact. And the last organizations I'll recommend is one called Tu'akkid. It's bilingual, leaning more into Arabic. It's on Insta, Twitter, and Facebook. And it's a verification site. There is a lot of misinformation going around. And so having something like this is really fucking important, to have something that's dedicated towards being like, no, this is fake, this is true, this is misconstrued, this is the original video, whatever. Especially now in the age of AI, especially now with voice modifications, with deep fakes and whatever, we have to be really fucking vigilant. And even before that, just with selective clips, just with things out of context, just whatever, misinformation has been a serious thing, and to me has been a major obstacle towards like forming actual solidarity with Syrians over the last like 10, 15 years. Aside from those organizations, I'll also make a list of personal accounts of Syrian activists and those within the Syrian context who I find very good, very anti-sectarian, very anti-authoritarian, what you would describe as on the left, who I've learned a lot from over the years, but also specifically around this, they've been writing a lot, and I think they bring a lot of clarity to the situation. And so, yeah, I'm very sorry if that was not a what you would have hoped I would have talked about. But honestly, it is just really fucking difficult. I feel so uneasy. And I don't know. I burn myself out almost immediately emotionally. Which is, I guess, I don't know. This is politically depressed. And so I guess that's to be expected. Anyway, I think next time you'll see me, it'll be the short video essay on the Druze. Hopefully I'll get that out within a few days. Although I might be traveling to Lebanon soon. I am traveling soon. Oof. Like 4 days. So if I don't get that out then, maybe you'll just see me online on my social media accounts if you're on there. Otherwise, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review. I've got my tip jar. Very much so appreciate it if you like this work that I do, to leave me a little bit of money in the tip jar so that I can continue doing this. Otherwise, don't forget to tell your friends and family about this podcast. With that said, that's it for me, and I'll see you all next time.